So today is the second day that we are going to look at this quadratic formula, which we talked about on Monday. And you had a practice worksheet yesterday that had some problems working with the quadratic formula that focused on substituting that plugging part, A, B, and C in, and then working through and simplifying it. And some of the problems that you did, you would have a solution that was just a one answer solution. And the other problems that you did, your solution was a square root that did not simplify. So today we're going to look at a couple of problems that are a little more involved. And I saved them for the second day because now I'm hoping that you get an idea as to the steps used to kind of work through the quadratic formula. And we're going to try that simplifying part today. So I'm on the checkpoint problems. And we are going to just work through some of these checkpoint problems together using the quadratic formula. And we'll start off with the first one. It says use the quadratic formula to solve the equation. Remember, our goal is to have it equal to 0, which this one is. And that form is ax squared plus bx plus c. And this one looks exactly like that form. So we're going to just plug the numbers into the quadratic formula. And I always write the values and what they represent so I know what to plug in. So maybe you have the quadratic formula memorized after using it a couple times. If not, that's okay. I have it right here at the top of my screen for us to look at. So looking here at the quadratic formula, it says x equals negative b. Well, that's a negative 2 since b is positive 2. Plus or minus, and then the square root of b squared. So 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3, because that's c. And then we're dividing that by 2 times a, which is 1. So that was the quadratic formula from yesterday that we talked about. We plug the numbers in, and now we chug through the problem. So plug and chug. All right, so now working through, we have a negative 2 plus or minus square root. We're doing the squared part first, multiplying those three numbers. And negative 4 times 1 is 4 times negative 3. So we have a positive 12. And then we're dividing that by 2. All right, continuing to simplify. We have negative 2 plus or minus. Now I'm doing that number and the square root, adding them together. That gets 16, and then divided by 2. So yesterday, we either had a plus or minus square root of 0, or we had a plus or minus number that we could not break down and simplify. Today's problems, we're going to be able to take this a little further and continue to simplify it. So I'm going to come up here, since I kind of ran out of room vertically. We have x equals negative 2 plus or minus. I have to do something with that square root before we can do divide. The division line is kind of like parentheses. You need to work above the division line or in the parentheses first before you can do anything below the division line. So this dividing by 2, we have to hold off and do that last. We can take the square root of 16 because that is 4. And then I have divided by 2. Now take notice, this is a plus or minus problem. So I really have two equations to now try and simplify. Similar to what we did last week when we were looking at those square roots, solving the equation using square roots. So we're going to divide this into two equations, negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2, negative 2 minus 4 divided by 2. That's really what the plus or minus means. Remember, this is the last section, so these are challenging problems. They are multi-step problems. They kind of involve everything we've done all year, so it pulls everything we've done all year together. So now we're going to do this. Place it in your calculator if you feel that's necessary, but we're going to look at the top part first. So negative 2 plus 4 is 2, and then divided by 2 makes 1. So now I have one answer. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. So again, we're doing the top part of the fraction. Divided by 2 makes negative 3. So now I have two answers for this problem. X is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 3. What a really long problem. So we worked through the square root or the quadratic formula part, and then we had to continue to simplify, and that's really challenging to do. All right, we're going to continue trying to work through a couple of these. The more you see, the more comfortable hopefully you'll get with the problem. So how about we look at number 3, kind of skip over number 2, giving me a little more space and you a little more space as well to write. So we skipped number 2, looking at number 3. I'm going to list A, B, and C. And then that quadratic formula, negative b, well, b is negative 2 already, so it becomes positive 2, plus or minus b squared, don't forget to put it in parentheses, minus 4 times a times c, divided by 2 times a. A is actually the number 3 now. All right, now we're looking underneath that radical. Squared part, negative 2 squared is 4. Anytime you square a number, it's positive. Multiplying, negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 times negative 6. You might need to put that in your calculator. So negative 4 times 3 times negative 6. What does that give you? That's a nice number of 72. A plus 72. And then on the bottom, we're actually multiplying. 2 times 3 gives us 6. Okay, keep working. From yesterday, I know I have to add 4 and 72 together to get 76. And then I have to divide that by 6. All right, so now comes the part where we have to simplify. We need a perfect square to go into 76. And I need to think about those perfect squares. So the first perfect square is a 4. And 76 does divide by 4. I'm going to do a little work here on the side, showing how I'm breaking up my square root. Breaking up the square root. So 76 divided by 4 is 19. I chose 4 because 4 is a perfect square. So my next step is to continue to work and break this down even further. So on the previous problem, we had the square root of 16, which was a nice number because it's a perfect square. In this case, the square root of 76 is not, but it can still be broken down. So I have the 2, I have the plus or minus. The square root of 4 becomes 2, and then I have the square root of 19 divided by 6. So this problem is different slightly from the one next door because I have a square root that still remains in the problem. However, I can still simplify it. And we're going to do that crisscross now to break it down. So I'm going to doing the 1. We're still solving for x. When you have divided by a number, that number that's on the bottom has to divide both numbers on top. So we have to take 2 divided by 6. Well, we don't want a decimal. We're going to reduce this as a fraction. 2 divided by 6 reduces to 1/3. I can divide each one of those by 2. And then I have the plus or minus sign. And then we're going to do the other one. We crisscross. 2 divided by 6, again, reduces to 1/3. We don't do anything with the square root of 19 because it's a square root number. The other numbers are not square root numbers. So this answer now says 1/3 because 2 divided by 6 reduced, plus or minus, and then again 2 divided by 6 reduced to 1/3, and then the square root of 19. So this is a different way that my answer can look. And you're going to see with these problems there's multiple ways that your solution might kind of be listed. So we had nice answers for number 1. For number 3 now, I have these answers in fractions and with a square root. We're going to go underneath to number 4. Look at this one as well. We're going to work through, see if we can solve the quadratic formula. So A, B, C. All right, you plug it in now. Try and plug it in. See if it works out for you. So I'm plugging in negative b becomes positive 2. B squared, placing it in parentheses because it's negative, AC. 2 times A. Now I'm simplifying underneath the square root. Thinking about that square part first. Negative 2 squared is 4. Multiplying those three numbers back. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 4 is 16. Dividing on the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. Next step, keep the 2 in front, keep the 2 on the bottom, but add 4 and 16 together. 4 plus 16 makes 20. So now this problem looks very similar to number 3, the one we just did. We have the square root of 20. It's not a perfect square, but I know that 4 times 5 goes into the square root of 20. Keeping the 2, keeping the plus or minus, I'm going to take that square root of 4. Square root of 4 becomes 2. Keeping the square root of 5, keeping the 2 on the bottom. So the only thing we changed was the square root of 4. And now we're going to do that crisscross method again. So I need to go both ways because both numbers on top are divided by the same value on the bottom. 2 divided by 2 is 1. I have the plus or minus sign. The other way, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and then we have the square root of 5. These numbers cannot be added together. I can't add 1 plus 1 and get 2 because they're different types of numbers. They're not the same kind. You have a number of 1 by itself, and then you have the number of the square root of 5. And you cannot combine numbers together that are not the same. So it stays as 1 plus or minus 1 and the square root of 5. All right, for now, let's skip number 6, or number 5, and we'll see if we can look at number 6, doing 4 examples today. I think that should give us enough to look at and work through. This last problem for number 6 is not equal to 0. The other 3 problems we just did were all equal to 0. It needs to be equal to 0 in order for us to use the quadratic formula. So there are 2 things on the right side. There's only 1 thing on the left. And I'd rather move 1 term than move 2 terms. Either side can equal 0. So I'm going to take this negative 2x squared and subtract it to the other side. So I'm going to write the negative 2x squared first because it's my x squared term. And then there's a negative 5x. And then there's a plus 7. These guys cancel. You can place that equal to sign wherever you want. 2x squared minus 2x squared is 0. I'm going to place it on the right side. It can go on either side, but just to keep everything consistent, I'm going to move it to the right so that it says equals 0. So my next step is to now solve the quadratic equation. So A is negative 2, B is negative 5, C is 7. And using the quadratic formula, let's plug those numbers in. Hopefully you're pretty good at plugging the numbers in now. Negative b is already negative 5, so positive 5. And then negative 5 squared minus 4 times a times c. And then we're dividing that by 2 times negative 2. All right, next part. Look underneath that square root. Let's do the exponent. Negative 5 squared is 25. Multiply everything together. And when we multiply, we have negative 4 times negative 2, which is 8. And then times 7. 8 times 7 is 56. On the bottom, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. All right, I think you need to pull a calculator out here. Grab that calculator. We're looking at a 5, a plus or minus, and then 25 and 56. Add those together, 25 plus 56. I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing. My mother-in-law is trying to call me. All right, 25 plus 56 is 81, and then I have divided by negative 4. All right, so we have a square root of 81. This is looking really nice. The square root of 81. We have a nice number here. The square root of 81 is 9. And then on the bottom, we have a negative 4. So we've got to solve this. We're going to split this up into two equations. This is different than the last two we did. This is like the first one that we did. So we have 5 plus 9 divided by negative 4. We have 5 minus 9 divided by negative 4. So I have the plus part and the minus part. We have numbers. We can add numbers together. When I add the top, 5 plus 9 is 14 divided by negative 4. That reduces, so take 14 divided by negative 4, we get a negative 7 divided by 2, or negative 3.5. But I want you to try and think of fractions now. We're at the end of the year. We're going to be keeping things as fractions. So negative 7 divided by 2. The next one, we have 5 minus 9, which is negative 4, divided by negative 4. That makes negative 1. So finally, we have two answers, negative 7 halves and negative 1. Wow, what a great problem here. So there is a worksheet down below, but you're not going to do that worksheet. I have a worksheet that's posted for tomorrow. Again, tomorrow's homework will be practicing some problems like this, a little more challenging. I'm going to have a video shown for you, just like I have been, that'll work through 2 of the problems, and then you'll have 4 problems to do. So it'll have 6 total problems. I work through 2, and then you are going to work through 4 of them on your own. If you have questions, send Mr. Longer an email. Have a great day.